Kiyotaka Ayanokoji is a master of the classroom, but in the blood-soaked streets of Renaissance Italy, he wouldn't last a week. We love the trope of the untouchable anime mastermind, but Niccolo Machiavelli didn't play games with school points, he played with heads on pikes. It's time to see why The Prince could shatter the masterpiece of the White Room. The biggest mistake in comparing Ayanokoji to Machiavelli is assuming intelligence works the same way everywhere. Ayanokoji was created to survive an artificial system where rules, incentives, information, and objectives are relatively stable. Machiavelli studied a world where those things could change overnight. The real world doesn't give you a neatly designed exam with a clear objective. It gives you incomplete information, unreliable allies, shifting incentives, rumors, war, betrayal, accidents, and people who can destroy your plans simply because they misunderstood it. Ayanokoji's strength is becoming the invisible variable inside a system. Machiavelli's strength was understanding that sometimes the system itself is the variable. That gives Ayanokoji something incredibly valuable: predictability. He can study incentives, identify patterns, calculate reactions, and build strategies around them. Now place that mind in Renaissance Italy. A city-state could change alliances because another ruler offered a better deal. A commander could switch sides. A noble family could become an enemy because of an inheritance dispute, insult, or rumor. A population could turn against a ruler because of famine, taxation, fear, or misinformation. There was no guarantee today's opponent would still be tomorrow's biggest threat. Ayanokoji is exceptional at solving games. Machiavelli understood that real political power often means deciding what game is being played in the first place. The problem isn't that Ayanokoji can't calculate. It's that real politics contains variables that aren't reliably rational. Machiavelli understood that strategy must be designed around imperfect human behavior. Fear, pride, greed, love, religion, and revenge can overpower rational calculation. And this is where the classroom and the court diverge. Ayanokoji prefers indirect control. He manipulates situations so other people unknowingly produce the result he wants. In a school competition, that's incredibly effective. But political power creates a problem. Sometimes you need people to know who is responsible. A ruler needs soldiers to recognize authority, allies to negotiate with, citizens to trust or fear him, and institutions to acknowledge his position. A political leader cannot remain invisible forever. Machiavelli understood that political power exists partly in perception. A ruler doesn't need every quality people admire. He needs to appear to possess the qualities that make his authority legitimate. Ayanokoji deliberately suppresses his reputation. In his environment, that's brilliant. Being underestimated protects him from becoming a target. But in politics, being underestimated can become a weakness. If nobody believes you possess authority, why would they follow you when following you becomes dangerous? At school, Ayanokoji can remain hidden because the institution provides authority and consequences. He doesn't need to create an entire political order. Machiavelli was concerned with maintaining power when the institution itself might be unstable. He wasn't only asking, "How do I defeat this opponent?" He was asking, "What happens after I defeat this opponent?" Winning one confrontation means little if that victory creates 3 larger enemies. This reveals one of the biggest weaknesses of the fictional mastermind archetype. It often assumes every problem has an optimal solution. Find the information, calculate the move, execute the plan, victory follows. Real politics doesn't work that cleanly. Sometimes every available option is bad. Ayanokoji's environment rewards optimization. Machiavelli's world rewards survival. Those aren't the same thing. Then there is luck. No strategy can eliminate randomness. Plans are exposed, economies collapse, allies become sick, enemies act irrationally, foreign powers intervene. Machiavelli called this uncontrollable element of political life fortuna, or fortune. But he didn't argue that luck controls everything. Capable leaders prepare themselves to exploit favorable circumstances and survive unfavorable ones. You cannot control fortune, but you can control how vulnerable you are to it. Ayanokoji's power comes from reducing uncertainty. Machiavelli's power comes from remaining functional when uncertainty cannot be reduced. This also exposes an interesting contradiction in the White Room. Ayanokoji was created through an extremely controlled environment designed to maximize human performance. His abilities are real, but the environment that produced them matters. The White Room assumes human performance can be optimized through controlled variables. Machiavelli's world demonstrates the opposite. Political life contains variables that cannot be completely controlled. The most dangerous opponent for Ayanokoji, therefore, wouldn't necessarily be someone smarter. It would be someone who refuses to behave like a predictable opponent. There's another difference that matters even more. Machiavelli understood institutions as weapons. Ayanokoji manipulates individuals, but political power belongs to networks: armies, churches, noble families, merchants, bureaucrats, citizens, and foreign governments. So the real battle isn't Ayanokoji versus Machiavelli sitting across from each other in a room. That scenario could easily favor Ayanokoji. The real battle is Ayanokoji trying to control an entire political environment, while Machiavelli is already thinking about the environment itself. This is the difference between tactical intelligence and political intelligence. Tactical intelligence wins encounters. Political intelligence determines what happens after the encounter. Advanced Nurturing High School is fundamentally a closed environment. Participants share the same institution, limited resources, defined goals, visible opponents, and measurable consequences. In an open system, adaptability can matter more than perfect calculation. This doesn't mean Ayanokoji would become incompetent. His observation, emotional control, physical ability, and strategic reasoning would make him an extraordinary political asset. But Machiavelli understood something Ayanokoji's world rarely forces him to confront at the same scale. Power isn't simply the ability to make the correct decision. It's the ability to make other people continue accepting the consequences of your decisions. People don't only obey incentives, they obey traditions, fear, identity, loyalty, religion, legitimacy, and whoever they believe will still be standing tomorrow. This is why Machiavelli wouldn't fight Ayanokoji on Ayanokoji's terms. He would change the environment around him. He would create competing incentives, divide interests, control information, and create situations where Ayanokoji's own secrecy became a disadvantage. And this brings us to the deepest reason Machiavelli would outmaneuver Ayanokoji. Machiavelli wasn't trying to prove he was the smartest person in the room. He was trying to remain in power. Those are completely different objectives. If Ayanokoji wins a confrontation but becomes politically isolated, that's not victory. If Machiavelli makes an imperfect decision that preserves his position, that may be success. Real power rewards durability. Ayanokoji represents the fantasy of perfected human capability, extraordinary intelligence, discipline, physical ability, emotional control, and strategic calculation. Machiavelli represents something less glamorous but more practical, the ability to operate when none of those things are enough. So this isn't really a debate about who has the higher IQ. Ayanokoji was trained to master the game. Machiavelli studied how to survive when there is no game master. And that is ultimately why Machiavelli would outmaneuver Ayanokoji in a real-world power struggle, not because Machiavelli was smarter in every category, and not because Ayanokoji couldn't adapt, but because the environment determines what intelligence is worth. A perfect strategist inside a predictable system is terrifying. A flexible strategist inside an unpredictable system is something else entirely. Ayanokoji knows how to win. Machiavelli understood what winning was supposed to protect. And when the objective isn't points, rankings, or proving superiority but simply remaining powerful tomorrow, that difference could decide everything.